The first thing you notice about that wrench is how clean it still is, still wrapped in its plastic sleeve where it has sat since the day you bought the driver. You have owned that club for years, and in all that time, you have never once turned the two weight ports on the sole plate that came with it. The tool exists to adjust the exact thing that age is quietly taking from you, and the industry is betting you never open the sleeve. Here is what the evidence shows. The driver in your bag came with its own system for changing launch, spin, and shot shape, installed at the factory and priced into the original purchase. The Pro Shop would rather sell you a purpose-built senior model for $600 than explain that the adjustment you need is already sitting in your hands. 3 settings on the driver you already own can do what that new club promises. This is where they are, and this is the order that matters. The official story has a very clean shape to it. As the years pass, swing speed drops, the ball stops climbing the way it used to, and the fade you could always work around turns into something that leaks further right. The fitting cart rolls out, the salesman nods at the launch monitor, and the phrase you have been dreading appears on the screen. Senior flex, senior loft, senior forgiveness. The implication is smooth and professional. Your old driver has aged out, and the only honest fix is a new one. Nobody mentions the wrench. That is the part that should make you pause. The club in the bag was designed with adjustable weights, a movable mast that changes the center of gravity inside the head. And that center of gravity is the secret engine behind every launch condition they are about to sell you back. Has anyone ever shown you this before? Almost never. Because the moment you understand how the weight ports work, the $600 senior driver becomes a hard conversation to justify. Here is the first setting, and it is the one that restores the flight you remember. Take the heavy weight, the one that came in the forward port, and move it to the rear position, as far from the face as it will go. Moving the mass away from the face raises the backspin and the launch angle, which is exactly what a slower swing speed needs to carry the ball deep into the fairway. The center of gravity shifts back, the head feels more stable through the turf, and that knuckleball fall that has been creeping into your drives starts to climb again. That rear weight move is the same launch condition a senior driver is sold on, and it costs you nothing but the wrench already in your bag. Subscribe to keep following the quiet charges out of your wallet, because this is only the first leak itemized. In the comments, write Dead Money. What you just heard is the surface. The Dead Money Golf ebook goes 7 levels deeper. Every mechanism, every markup, every number fully sourced. 120 pages of what we can't post here. Plus the vault. 5 private video investigations that exist nowhere else. Link in the description and pinned comment. If you've already moved your heavy weight to the rear and watched the ball climb back out of its dive. This is where it gets interesting. The launch you just restored is the precise set of numbers that a high launch senior driver is marketed on. The taller flight, the softer landing, the forgiveness that turns a toe strike into a playable result. You just bought it for the cost of a few seconds with the wrench that shipped free in the box. The financial contrast is almost embarrassing to lay out, so I will do it plainly. The rear weight setting costs $0, and the club it replaces sits in the Pro Shop at a price that could cover a season of green fees. Now stay with me, because the pattern goes deeper than the first port. Why would a manufacturer install adjustable weights and ship a tool with the club, only to let that tool gather dust in a drawer? Because the adjustment was never the product. The adjustment was the seed for the next sale. Every mechanical capability built into that sole plate is a feature the industry intends to sell you a second time, repackaged under a new label and framed as a necessity of aging. The second setting is the one that answers the miss that age brings. Move the weight toward the heel, the side closest to the shaft, and you introduce a draw bias that helps square the club face through impact. For the golfer, whose fade has become a slice, this single change can be worth more than any forgiveness claim on a showroom sticker. The weight shifts the center of gravity, so the face naturally wants to close, taking the right side of the course out of play before you even address the ball. The trap here is a familiar one. There is a whole category of draw bias drivers on the market priced and sold specifically to the golfer who keeps losing balls into the right rough. The same mechanical logic that moves a few grams toward the heel in your existing head is the logic that justifies an entirely new purchase. The weight track already in your bag does the thing that the marketing says only a new club can do, and the salesman never once opens the sleeve. That brings us to the third setting, and it is the one that most golfers get exactly backwards. The front weight position, the port closest to the face, lowers launch and reduces spin, which is the ideal setup for a golfer with high swing speed who wants to keep the ball under the wind. But for a swing speed that has slowed, that same forward position is the enemy of carry. It produces the low, flat ball that falls out of the sky and leaves you short of every marker you used to reach. The third setting is the quietest tax of the three. The front port lowers launch, cuts, spin, and for a swing that has slowed, it drops the ball out of the sky. Subscribe if you want the next hidden line item traced before the salesman turns it into a new club. In the comments, write Dead Money. What you just heard is the surface. The Dead Money Golf ebook goes 7 levels deeper. Every mechanism, every markup, every number fully sourced. 120 pages of what we can't post here. Plus the vault, 5 private video investigations that exist nowhere else. Link in the description and pinned comment. Then tell me if you've ever watched a well-struck drive fall short and blamed the swing instead of the weight. Moving that weight out of the forward port restores the spin window that a slower swing needs to keep the ball in the air. It is the difference between watching the ball drop and watching it ride. The manufacturers know this. That is why the forward weight ships in the factory position for many drivers, because a low spin flight looks impressive on a launch monitor in the hands of a young fitter, and the senior golfer buying that same head never thinks to move the mass out of the way. Stand back and look at what the 3 settings actually are. A rear weight for launch and forgiveness, a heel weight for squaring the face, a forward weight removed to restore spin. 3 adjustments, all free, all performed with the wrench that came in the box, and each one replaces a separate product category that the industry would rather sell you. The system was never confused about how the weights work. The system was simply counting on you never reading the manual. Remember that wrench in the plastic sleeve? Here is where it bites. The senior driver they want to sell you is already in your bag. It has been there since the day the club carried that plastic sleeve out of the store. The lighter shaft, the added loft, the draw bias that tames the slice, the forgiveness that saves the off-center strike, all of it is a set of weight positions on the sole plate of a club you already own and paid for once. If you have ever stood on the tee watching the ball fall short of the marker you used to reach, and heard the pro shop voice say that you are losing swing speed, and it is time to think about a senior model, you know that quiet moment of being played. It is not a dramatic moment. There is no villain in a trench coat. There is just a fitting bay, a launch monitor, and a conversation that very carefully never turns the club over to look at the ports on the underside of the head. You are set up to believe that distance loss is a hardware problem that only new hardware can fix. The truth is more useful and less expensive. The hardware you own was designed to age with you. The adjustable weights exist to change the ball flight as your swing changes, and the factory sealed that capability into the original price. The industry simply never tells you the senior upgrade is a quarter turn of the wrench that's shipped free in the box. The mechanical reasoning is straightforward once the fear of the unknown fades. A rearward weight raises the center of gravity and deepens the forgiveness. A heel weight biases the face closed and straightens the flight. A forward weight removed allows the spin to climb back to the number that carries the ball. Each change is reversible. Each change is written in the manual that came with the club, and each change costs nothing but the time it takes to find the wrench. The financial irony deserves a quiet moment of its own. The rear weight setting delivers the launch that the high loft senior model sells for a premium. The heel weight setting delivers the shot shape that the draw bias driver markets as a breakthrough. The forward weight removal delivers the spin that the forgiving head promises to protect. 3 functions, 3 price tags in the Pro Shop, and 1 tool that came free in the original purchase. There is another layer here that the catalogue of settings does not quite cover, and it is worth sitting with before we close the loop. The swing weight, the felt heaviness of the club as it swings, is also adjustable, and for many senior golfers it matters more than any single weight port. The balance point of the club, where the mass sits along the shaft, changes how the head releases through the ball, and a club that feels heavy in the hands can quietly rob you of the tempo that produces distance. Most drivers ship at a factory swing weight that suits a faster, more aggressive tempo. For a slower, smoother swing, the same physical club can feel dead and unresponsive, and the golfer compensates by swinging harder, which destroys timing. The fix is not a new shaft, and it is not a new head. It is a strip of lead tape on the head or a heavier grip on the handle, shifting the balance point so the club feels alive in your hands again. That adjustment costs pocket change, and it changes the entire character of the swing. A strip of lead tape on the head or a heavier grip on the handle costs less than a sleeve of balls, and it changes whether the club feels alive or dead in your hands. Subscribe to keep following these itemized charges, because the next overcharge is already hiding in the wrench sleeve. In the comments, write dead money. What you just heard is the surface. The Dead Money Golf ebook goes 7 levels deeper. Every mechanism, every markup, every number fully sourced. 120 pages of what we can't post here. Plus, the vault. 5 private video investigations that exist nowhere else. Link in the description and pinned comment. Then, tell us if you have ever felt a driver change character after a 2-gram shift. Here is the quiet part nobody mentions. The weight track position, the swing weight, the total feel of the head through impact, all of it can be tuned on the club you already own, and the industry has organized an entire retail category around the refusal to say so. The senior driver aisle is not a collection of superior technology. It is a collection of adjustments you were never shown, pre-assembled and upcharged. When you pull the wrench out of the sleeve and make the first change, something shifts that has nothing to do with ball flight. You stop being the customer who receives the pitch and start being the golfer who reads the sole plate. The launch monitor stops being a judge and becomes a tuning tool. The Pro Shop stops being an authority and becomes a store, like any other store, selling you things you may or may not have the competence to make for yourself. The 3 settings stand as a small monument to that shift. Rear weight for the launch you thought you had lost. Heel weight for the slice you thought was permanent. Forward weight removed for the spin that keeps the ball in the air. Each one is a sentence the fitting cart never finished, and each one is now yours to decide on your own terms. The afternoon light comes through the window and catches the metal of the wrench as you line it up with the port. The weight seats with a click that feels more final than it should. You stand over the ball with the same driver, the same shaft, the same years in your legs, and the first swing sends the ball climbing into the blue of the sky, riding the spin you gave it back, carrying past the marker that has been out of reach all season. And the sound of it landing is the sound of the system losing its grip on you. The senior driver stays in the shop. The club in your hands just learned the trick it was built for, and you are the one who taught it. That weight port was never a decoration, and the wrench was never a suggestion. They were the answer the whole time, and the only thing that had to change was who you believed.